opening statement of the Chief Political Consultant and Founding Chairman of the CPP, Joma Sison.
Thank you. His Excellency, the Honorable Eric Porum, Ambassador of the Royal Norwegian Government to the Philippines, and Her Excellency Ambassador Elizabeth Slaughter, Special Envoy of the RNG to the Philippine peace process. His Excellency Foreign Secretary, the Honorable Perfecto Yasay Jr. Let me say a few words. We thank you for gracing this occasion. Your presence underscores the interest of the President, no less, in the peace negotiation. And it's good that we have this opportunity to meet, because we have been in a sort of mutual admiration club for some time. I admired your resignation as chairman of the SEC to be able to fight for the principles of good government. And I also appreciate your cooperation with the lawyers of the legal progressive organizations in a number of cases brought before the Supreme Court. So we are all friends. And dear beloved, dear compatriots in the negotiating panels and delegations of the government, the Republic of the Philippines, and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, and distinguished guests and friends, as Chief Political Consultant of the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, I reiterate to all of you the warmest greetings and best wishes of the NDFP for solidarity and peace, and our deep gratitude to the Royal Government of Norway for consistently supporting the Philippine process and facilitating this third round of formal talks in the GRP and NDFP peace negotiations, and to the government of Italy for cooperating and letting Rome be the venue of the current round. As in the previous two rounds of formal talks in Oslo, I continue to declare that the two negotiating panels can negotiate in a non-adversarial way and overcome any obstacle by addressing the roots of the armed conflict and seeking to satisfy the demands of the people for basic social, economic, and political reforms in order to lay the foundation of a just and lasting peace and build a Philippines that is truly independent, democratic, just, prosperous, and progressive. Our mutual objectives are attainable. It's within the framework of the bourgeois democratic revolution. And President Duterte and the NDFP profess to be interested in a socialist revolution, no less. But I think we can facilitate the advent of socialism if we do the necessary bourgeois democratic reforms first. So we are fortunate to have a government that has such a progressive outlook. In my telephone conversation with President Duterte last month, we discussed in earnest how to make the GRP and NDFP negotiations successful. I am pleased that President Duterte has publicly expressed a few days ago the wish to meet with me at a certain point after the third round of formal talks and to take necessary measures to further ensure the advance of the peace negotiations. It is important that at every round of formal talks, the GRP and NDFP review and require compliance with the already existing agreements. Each side has its own concerns regarding these. The NDFP is grateful for last year's release of the NDFP consultants detained in violation of the joint agreement on safety and immunity guarantees and the comprehensive agreement on respect for human rights and international humanitarian law, or CARIL. The NDFP continues to expect the release of the hundreds of political prisoners in compliance with CARIL and JASI. The concurrent or reciprocal unilateral declarations of ceasefire by the GRP and NDFP can be easily turned into a more stable bilateral ceasefire if the GRP complies with the CARIL by releasing all political prisoners listed by the NDFP who have been unjustly and wrongly imprisoned on trumped-up charges of common crimes. The most effective remedy for such release is through general amnesty, as President Duterte himself told the NDFP emissary in May 2016. The NDFP emissary is beside me, is now the chief negotiator of the NDFP negotiating panel. In view of the apparent political rehabilitation of the fascist dictator Marcos with his burial in the Libyan ng mga bayani, the NDFP has been concerned about adverse consequences to the provisions in CARIL for justice and indemnification of the victims of human rights and violations during the Marcos regime. I'm glad that President Duterte has run ahead of this round, and he invited, I think with the assistance of GRP Chief Negotiator David Bello, no? He invited those parties interested, no? In the realization of the provision of the provisions of CARIL for justice and indemnification of victims of human rights violations during the Marcos regime. And by his deed, the President indicates that his particular action of promising to push the commission or board which was created during the time of Aquino would do its work properly. The NDFP is seriously concerned with violations of the CARIL and the unilateral ceasefire arising from Oplan Bayanihan and Oplan Kapayapaan, and from the anti-drugs campaign Oplan Tokhang and Double Barrel. In this regard, we, the NDFP, expect the GRP to comply with CARIL. The Joint Monitoring Committee has received complaints for investigation and appropriate action. It's good that the guidelines of the Joint Monitoring Committee is already or nearly finished, ready for signing. Ahead of the third round of formal talks, the Filipino people are expecting the reciprocal working committees on social and economic reforms to make a significant advance. Both RWCs have already fleshed out the common outline of the Comprehensive Agreement on Social and Economic Reforms, or CASER, and can indeed make a significant headway in the current round in reconciling their respective drafts and agree on how to accelerate the unification of the drafts by holding bilateral draft sessions by teams before the fourth round. The prospect is in sight that within 6 months, the CASER shall already be ready for signing by the panels, and everyone will understand how genuine land reform, national industrialization, and expansion of social services shall be realized. The GRP and NDFP should be truly interested in social, economic, and political reform. The Filipino people want to end the oppressive and exploitative ruling system dominated by foreign monopoly capitalists, domestic landlords, and capitalist bureaucrats. With regard to political and constitutional reforms, the NDFP holds the view that there are good and viable examples of both unitary and federal forms of state. A federal system of government is not necessarily good or better than a unitary form of state, especially when it carries over from an already rotten unitary form of state certain malignancies and does not have constitutional guarantees against the penchant of the oligarchy or puppetry, dictatorship, corruption, dynasty building, and warlordism. The NDFP is willing to maintain its alliance with the GRP and the Duterte administration, in particular by cooperating in the founding of the Federal Republic of the Philippines, creating a parliamentary system and making a new constitution that upholds, defends, and promotes national independence, democracy, economic development, social justice, cultural progress, independent foreign policy, and international solidarity with all peoples and all countries for peace and development. The reciprocal working groups on political and constitutional reforms of both panels have already finished and exchanged their drafts of the Comprehensive Agreement on Political and Constitutional Reform. They have advanced ahead of schedule. There is plenty of time to enrich and polish these drafts, even while CASER is still being negotiated. It will not be surprising if after the signing of the CASER by the panels, it will take 1 or 2 rounds or some 3 months after the forging of CASER to finish the CA on political and constitutional reforms for signing by panels. The advantage of having the CASER and CAPCR signed and approved by the principals within the first 2 years of the Duterte government is that these agreements shall be implemented for at least 2 years before the end of said government. If implemented to the satisfaction of the Filipino people and the NDFP, these agreements shall lay the full basis of the comprehensive agreement on the end of hostilities and disposition of forces as early as 2020 or 2021. The leaders, officers, and troops of the warring parties can expect to benefit from a mutual general amnesty. The Filipino people, the NDFP, and its forces continue to hope that the peace negotiations will successfully pass through the following tests and phases: the amnesty and release of all political prisoners in compliance with CARIL, the forging of CASER and CAPCR, the implementation of the 3 priorly cited agreements, and the forging and finalization of the EHDF. In various ways, President Duterte can prove in real and concrete terms that he is a truly patriotic and progressive president and fights against imperialists and oligarchs for the benefit of the Filipino people. The GRP and NDFP peace process is one of the best ways to do so, and other ways follow easily when the good agreements are implemented and the broad masses of the people are aroused, organized, and mobilized to act for their own good along the national and democratic line. Thank you.